Sometimes, travelers, life gives you a little, and then it gives you a lot. Tonight, Nancy Drew faces a peculiar problem without any easy solution. The Mystery at Lilac Inn by Carolyn Keene. A bright blue roadster, low slung and smart, rolled swiftly along the winding lake road to halt suddenly before a large signboard which boldly proclaimed to all who chanced that way, "Lilac Inn, chicken dinners, our speciality." The driver, a pretty girl of perhaps 16, attractive in a frock which either by accident or design exactly matched the blue of the automobile, smiled whimsically as she read the words. "My speciality, too," Nancy Drew told herself. "The thought of chicken almost makes me expire from hunger. I think I'll stop here for luncheon." Guiding the car onto the side road, she drove beneath a long canopy of trees and presently came within sight of Lilac Inn. As she swung the roadster into line with the row of automobiles parked in the yard, it seemed to her that the old inn had never appeared more picturesque than on this particular spring day. Huge lilac bushes, heavy with bloom, completely surrounded the rambling structure, while a well-kept lawn sloped gently to a crystal lake at the rear. Alighting from the roadster, Nancy stood for a moment gazing toward the lake. So absorbed was she in the beauty of the scene that she failed to notice the approach of a girl who from appearance might have been her own age. "Nancy Drew, of all people!" the stranger cried eagerly as she rushed up. Startled at hearing her name called, Nancy Drew wheeled quickly and then smiled as she recognized a former classmate whom she had not seen for many weeks. It was not difficult to smile upon Emily Crandall, for her candid blue eyes, delicate coloring, and almost classical features gave her a beauty which was the envy of her friends. Though she lacked Nancy Drew's poise and keen mind, she did possess an unusually sunny disposition and had a way of accepting life as she found it. Since the death of her mother many years before, she had been under the guardianship of Mrs. Jane Willoughby, a young widow. Unfortunately, Emily Crandall had never had a great deal of money, but the lack of it did not appear to trouble her. "Emily Crandall!" Nancy exclaimed in genuine delight, gripping her friend's hand. "What brought you here?" "Oh, I was driving to River Heights to see a friend. Mrs. Willoughby lent me her sedan for the day, but as luck would have it, the mean thing stalled. I walked here thinking I might find someone to help me." "Perhaps you're only out of gasoline." "I'm afraid not, but why worry about such a trifle as a stalled car? After all, it was fortunate that I was forced to stop here. Otherwise, I should have missed you. What are you doing here anyway? Looking for another mystery?" "I should say not," Nancy Drew returned emphatically. "I think I've had enough of mystery to last me a lifetime. Anyway, if I were looking for one, I wouldn't choose such a lovely spot as Lilac Inn." "Mysteries sometimes pop up in strange places, Nancy, and I must say you have a faculty for running into them. Everyone said it was a wonderful piece of detective work when you solved the mystery of the Jacob Aborn bungalow. I read glowing accounts of your cleverness in the papers. Just imagine capturing a criminal. I'd be thrilled to death." "I was glad to help Laura Pendleton regain her inheritance," Nancy said quietly, "but I'm afraid the reporters exaggerated my part a little." Then, to change the subject, "Have you had luncheon?" "No, I haven't, and it's 1 o'clock, too. I'm nearly starved." "Then why not lunch with me? After that, we can see what can be done about your car." "Suits me," Emily agreed willingly. Arm in arm, the two girls hurried up the path to the inn. Entering, they saw that the dining room was crowded, but the head waiter bowed to Nancy in recognition, and, to the astonishment of the people who had not received choice tables, They were promptly escorted to a secluded nook which permitted an excellent view of the lake and the grounds. "How do you do it?" Emily asked in a low tone when the girls were seated. "The waiter gave us the nicest table in the room." "Oh, I've been here before. That probably explains it." "You know it doesn't, Nancy Drew, but you're too modest to admit that you're something of a personage. At the rate you're going, you'll soon be as famous as your father." "Oh, Emily," Nancy protested. "What possesses you anyway? Just because I've solved a few old mysteries." Her voice trailed off as she studied the menu card. "I can't make up my mind what to order." "You're positively the limit," Emily sighed as she too turned her attention to the bill of fare. "Food interests you more than an honest compliment." "Right now, I'm afraid I must admit it does," Nancy laughed. "You see, I've driven nearly 70 miles since breakfast. Dad sent me over to Windlow with some legal papers for Judge Howell. I started back without luncheon." "I'm glad you did, Nancy. Otherwise, we'd not have met here." Nancy Drew finished writing out her order and after handing it to the waiter, settled back into her chair. "Tell me, what have you been doing with yourself this summer, Emily? I haven't seen you for ages." "Can't you guess by looking at my freckles? I've been living at a cottage on the lake." "Alone?" "Oh, no, with Mrs. Willoughby. She's a dear, Nancy, but she's not to be my guardian much longer." "Why, how's that?" Nancy inquired with surprise. "Well, in less than a week, I'll be of age. I'll be 18 next Friday, and it's going to be the most exciting birthday I have ever had." "You mean because you'll be free from your guardian?" "Oh, no, I always liked Mrs. Willoughby. I'm thrilled because I'm to come into my inheritance." "Your inheritance? Why, I didn't know." "Neither did I until last week," Emily broke in. "There was very little left of my mother's estate, but it seems that by my grandmother's will, I'm to come into the Crandall family jewels." "Oh, Emily, how wonderful! I've always heard of the famous Crandall jewels." "They're beauties, Nancy. Mostly diamonds, too, valued at not a cent less than $40,000. "I'd love to see them." "Well, you shall. Mrs. Willoughby is turning them over to me on Friday." "Doesn't it worry you, Emily?" "I wouldn't know how to take care of such an inheritance." "Well, it does worry me a little," Emily admitted slowly. "But of course, I'll rent a safe deposit box at the bank." "I wouldn't delay if I were you." "I guess I won't," Emily decided after a moment of thought. "I've been in a state of respectable poverty too long to risk losing my fortune now that I've come into it. However, I won't dispose of the jewels until after you've seen them, Nancy. Can't you motor out to our cottage next Friday?" "Of course I'll come," Nancy returned eagerly. "I wouldn't miss an opportunity to see the Crandwell jewels." By this time the waiter had appeared, bearing a tray of food, and the girls turned their attention to the good things which were placed before them. "You haven't told me a thing about yourself," Emily presently said to her friend. "I guess I have been monopolizing the conversation." "Oh, there's nothing special to tell. Last summer I had a thrilling time of it at Melrose Lake, but this year I'm afraid I'll be stuck at River Heights all summer, unless I find a new housekeeper to take Hannah Gruen's place." "Your housekeeper is leaving?" "Yes. Her sister is ill, and she's expected to be called away at any day now to take care of her." "I dread looking for another to take her place." "You don't know where I can find a good housekeeper, do you?" "Indeed, I don't. I'm afraid you'll have quite a time finding anyone." "I don't doubt it," Nancy sighed. "But at least I'll have several days before Hannah leaves. That will give me a chance to break in a new girl." The two finished their luncheon, and although Emily protested, Nancy insisted on paying the check. They left the dining room, pausing outside the door. "If you'll excuse me for a minute, I'll make a telephone call," Nancy said. I must let Dad know I'll be late in reaching River Heights, or he'll be worried." Hurrying away, she sought a telephone booth and quickly put in a call to River Heights. After a brief wait, she heard her father's voice at the other end of the wire. "Hello, Nancy," Carson Drew began before she could say a word. "Jove, I'm glad you called just now. I've been trying to reach you for the last 2 hours." "Why? What has happened?" Nancy demanded in alarm. "I just received a telegram from Judge Graham. You know, he's one of the biggest men in the state. He'll spend the coming weekend with us." "Oh," gasped Nancy, but instantly rose to the occasion. "Well, I guess I can manage it all right. I'll come home just as quickly as I can." "I haven't told you the worst, Nancy. Hannah just learned that her sister has suffered a relapse. She's planning to leave on the 23 train." "Leaving today?" "Yes, with Judge Graham coming. You must get busy at once." "I'll rush right home, Dad, and see what can be done. But I'm dreadfully afraid it will be impossible to find anyone to take her place on such short notice." "Do the best you can, Nancy. I'm depending on you." With that, Carson Drew said goodbye and hung up the receiver. Nancy Drew stood for a moment staring blankly at the telephone. She knew that her father had no comprehension of the Herculean task which lay before her. In some way, she must find a satisfactory housekeeper before Judge Graham's arrival, but how it was to be accomplished, she did not know. Leaving the telephone booth, Nancy Drew hurried back to where she had left Emily Crandall and quickly explained that she must start at once for River Heights. "Can I drop you off at the nearest garage?" she offered. "You can find a mechanic and go back after your car." "Won't it be out of your way?" "Not at all. There's a garage about 3 miles from here." "Then I'll certainly accept your offer, because I don't want to camp on the road all day." Nancy led the way to the roadster. Skillfully exiting the parking space, she drove down the lane to the main road and soon left Lilac Inn far behind. Presently sighting a roadside garage, she stopped the car and Emily alighted. "Don't forget you're to see the Crandall jewels next Friday," she reminded Nancy as she said goodbye. "I won't." As Emily stepped back, Nancy shifted gears. The roadster moved slowly away and then gathered speed. Nancy Drew drove rapidly, for she was eager to reach home, knowing that much work was waiting for her. She glanced at her watch and saw that it was after 2 o'clock. She must hurry if she was to get there before Hannah left. It was exactly 2:30 when she reached the outskirts of River Heights. Following the boulevard, she came within sight of her own home and was relieved to see her father's automobile standing at the door. That meant that he had not yet taken Hannah to the railroad station. Swinging into the driveway, Nancy Drew halted the roadster and sprang out. But before she could reach the house, her father, suitcase in hand, came out the front door, followed by Hannah Gruen. The housekeeper was the first to catch sight of Nancy. "Oh, Miss Nancy," she began apologetically. "I'm dreadfully sorry to leave you in a mess like this, but my poor sister—" "Of course you must go," Nancy told her quickly. "Don't worry about me. I'll get along somehow." "You're so kind, Miss Nancy. I'll come back just the first minute I can, but it may be several months." "Stay as long as your sister needs you." "We must hurry if you're to catch your train, Hannah," Carson Drew interrupted. "It's a long way to the station." He rushed the housekeeper to the waiting automobile and started the motor. "Better get in touch with an employment agency right away," he called back to Nancy as the car moved away. Nancy watched the automobile until it was out of sight and then walked slowly into the house. She knew that Hannah had indeed left her with a mess. Since the death of her mother many years before, Nancy Drew had managed the household. On the whole, she had engineered everything so skillfully that her father little dreamed of the heavy responsibility which rested upon her shoulders. As a famous criminal and mystery case lawyer, Carson Drew found it necessary to maintain a certain social position, and accordingly, Nancy was frequently called upon to entertain noted professionals. She had often been present when Carson Drew discussed important cases with detectives and police officials, and as a result had become interested in detective work herself. Her first fame came when she uncovered the secret of the old clock. Later, she solved the mystery of a troubled household, discovering a hidden staircase and having no end of creepy adventures in an underground passageway. Undaunted by this experience, she had risked her life to help Laura Pendleton. Now, as Nancy Drew walked slowly toward the house, she was considering the problem which Hannah Gruen's departure had created. Her father confidently expected that by the time Judge Graham arrived for his weekend visit, the household would be moving as smoothly as before. But Nancy, who had tried many housekeepers before she had secured Hannah, was beset with doubt. "I'll telephone the agency right away and see what they can do for me," she decided. Having looked up a number in the directory, she repeated it to an operator and after a brief wait, was connected with the manager of the best employment agency in River Heights. She stated her wants briefly, trying not to appear too exacting. "We'll do the best we can for you, miss," came the not-too-comforting response. "But right now, we only have one housekeeper on hand." "Send her out this afternoon," Nancy ordered in despair. "I must have someone immediately." Replacing the telephone on the stand, she went to the kitchen to take stock of affairs there. As she had feared, everything was in confusion. In her haste, Hannah had not even ordered the groceries for the following day. Nancy set about putting things in order. While she was making out the grocery list, she heard her father's car in the drive. "Well, did you get a maid?" he questioned a few minutes later when he entered the living room. "Yes, the agency is sending out a woman this afternoon." Nancy, observing that her father looked tired, refrained from adding that she feared the worst. "I'm mighty glad you found someone," Carson Drew responded in relief. "You're a wonderful little manager. By the way, I suppose you delivered those papers to Judge Howell, all right?" "Yes, I found him at the courthouse and had no trouble. On the way back, I stopped at Lilac Inn for luncheon and ran into Emily Crandall. She's celebrating her 18th birthday this week. According to her grandmother's will, she's to inherit the famous Crandall diamonds." Carson Drew whistled softly. "That's quite a windfall, I must say. I remember the Crandall jewels very well. They were very quaint and beautiful." "I'm so glad they were willed to Emily. She's never had many pretty things, especially since the death of her mother." "I hope she'll manage to hang on to them after they fall into her hands," Mr. Drew commented. "Oh, I'm sure Emily won't let them slip through her fingers. She's not in the least extravagant." "I wasn't thinking of that. It merely occurred to me that unscrupulous persons may be interested in those jewels." Nancy nodded thoughtfully. "I believe she intends to place them in a bank vault immediately." "A very wise precaution." Carson Drew lowered his voice as he heard a heavy footstep on the porch. Nancy sprang up from the davenport where she was sitting and rushed to the door. "It must be the new housekeeper," she cried hopefully. As she opened the door, her heart sank within her. It was indeed the woman sent by the employment agency, but a more unlikely housekeeper Nancy had never seen. She was slovenly in appearance and had an unpleasant way of shuffling her feet when she walked. Inviting her into the house, Nancy asked a few questions, which the woman answered in an unsatisfactory manner. She was also unable to produce references of any description. "I'm very sorry, but I'm afraid you won't do," Nancy told her at last. It was with a feeling of mingled disappointment and relief that she watched the woman depart. As a housekeeper, the woman was impossible, and yet she wondered if she had been unwise to let her go. She must find someone. Rushing to the telephone, she called a number and was quickly connected with another employment agency. After a long discussion with the manager, she finally secured a promise that a woman would be sent out early the next morning. She was washing dishes when she heard a sharp knock on the front door the next day. Drying her hands, she rushed into the hall to answer the summons. As she swung open the massive oak door, she beheld a tall, wiry, dark-complexioned girl who obviously was the one sent out from the agency. She had dark, piercing eyes and stared at Nancy almost impudently. Nancy resisted an impulse to shut the door in her face. She did not like the girl's sly look. On the other hand, she thought it might not be fair to judge by appearances alone. Accordingly, she smiled pleasantly and invited the girl into the living room. The stranger seated herself on the davenport and, to Nancy's amazement, proceeded to look the house over most critically, darting quick glances from one room to another. "She's prying," Nancy thought. Aloud, she said, "What's your name?" "Mary Mason." "Can you furnish references?" The girl made no response, but from a pocketbook brought out an envelope and handed it to Nancy. The envelope contained several references, and Nancy glanced quickly over them. To her surprise, the girl came highly recommended from her former employers, and it appeared that she had held responsible positions. Nancy had been on the verge of dismissing the girl, but in the face of such excellent references, she hesitated. She was not favorably impressed with Mary Mason, for the girl had a harsh face and a bold manner, but she knew that in all probability it would be impossible to find another girl before Saturday. She had no choice in the matter. "You appear quite young to take complete charge of a household," Nancy began doubtfully. "Do you feel secure you could manage the work?" "Of course, I will direct you until you learn the routine." Mary Mason tossed her head contemptuously. "I always work without direction." Indeed, Nancy was still more unfavorably impressed and decided to ask the girl a few more personal questions. "Where is your home?" "My home?" The girl looked startled and then said quickly, "I haven't a real home. I'm an orphan." "Oh," Nancy murmured, but for some reason which she could not understand, she found it impossible to feel especially sympathetic. It even occurred to her that Mary Mason had deliberately told a falsehood, but she tried to force this suspicion from her mind. Probably it was only the girl's queer manner. "Your age?" she inquired. 18. Again, Nancy was surprised, for she had made up her mind that Mary Mason was at least 2 years older than that. She next asked a few questions concerning the work which the girl had done in the past, and was better pleased with her answers. It was at least evident that she could cook and keep house. Nancy decided that she could put up with her until after Judge Graham's visit. Perhaps she would adapt herself after she had been in the Drew household for a number of days. "I will try you for a week," Nancy told her. "When can you come?" "This afternoon, if you want me." "What salary can I expect?" "Oh yes, I forgot to mention that. I pay very well indeed, but in return I expect faithful service. I will start you off at $15 a week with room and board, and of course you may have 1 day a week off." Nancy Drew had expected that Mary Mason would express satisfaction at this arrangement, for the pay was much higher than the average in River Heights. Instead, the girl scowled darkly. "Surely that is enough," Nancy said a trifle impatiently. "Oh, I suppose it'll have to do, but it's not as much as I should have." "I notice in your references that you have been only receiving $12 a week." Mary Mason looked confused, as though she had been trapped. "Well, 15 will do, I guess." "Then, if you are satisfied with the wage, I will tell you something of the work. I am sure you will not find it particularly difficult, but as I have stated, I am rather exacting about details. You see, because of my father's position, it is necessary for us to do a great deal of entertaining." "I'll have no trouble," the girl returned indifferently. "Then I guess there is nothing more I need tell you until later. I will have your room ready for you when you return this afternoon with your things." Mary Mason rose to depart. She sauntered across the floor, casting a last appraising glance about the room. Nancy escorted her to the door, and as she opened it, recalled that she had neglected to mention her own name. "I am Nancy Drew," she said pleasantly. Mary Mason's indifferent attitude vanished as if by magic. "Nancy Drew?" she repeated tensely. "Why, yes. You've heard of me, perhaps?" The girl ignored the question. In fact, she seemed not to have heard it. As Nancy stared at her in surprise, she saw that the color had drained from her face, leaving it white and frightened. "Who are you?" the girl demanded harshly. "You aren't the daughter of—" "Carson Drew?" Nancy finished. "You've probably heard of him. Your father is a lawyer?" "Yes, he specializes in criminal and mystery cases." The announcement had a very peculiar effect on Mary Mason. She took a step backward, and her hand gripped the doorknob. Her eyes dilated with something that looked like fear. "I can't take this position, Miss Drew," she said a trifle shakily. You can't take it? Why not, may I ask?" I didn't know your father was a lawyer." "What difference can that make?" Nancy asked bluntly. "I'll not work in such a place. I wouldn't think of it." "My father will be very kind to you. You need have no fear on that score. I don't see why you should be afraid." "Oh, I'm not afraid," Mary returned hastily. "It's just that I might get into trouble working at a place where a man of this house is always mixing up in strange cases. You'll have to find another girl." "But it's so late, and I've had such a time. Judge Graham is coming this week, and—" "I'll tell you, I won't stay," the girl broke in, becoming more excited. "Even if I offer you $18 instead of $15 a week? That's an outrageous amount." "I won't stay here under any condition. Let me out." Nancy Drew reluctantly stepped aside, and Mary Mason rushed out the door, fairly running across the porch in her haste to reach the street. Nancy, a puzzled expression on her face, stood in the doorway and watched her until she rounded a corner. "Can you beat that?" she exclaimed, lapsing into slang. "If she isn't the strangest girl I ever met! And to think I've wasted nearly an hour talking to her."